in a well-run organization, it's balanced. You have all those things working in balance. So you're achieving things and people feel safe amongst each other and they feel like they're being recognized for their good work, et cetera, and they feel valued and valuable.
Yeah.
However, in too many modern organizations, it's unbalanced. It's tilted towards dopamine. You know, hit the goal, get the bonus. Hit the goal, get the bonus. Hit the goal, get the bonus. Which is a very short-term way of getting people to do things. Mm-hmm. And the serotonin and oxytocin, the warm and fuzzies, the feeling of community, the feeling of trust, the feeling of friendship, the feeling of family, that's thrown away, and those systems are not built. And so what ends up happening is we create environments in which we're constantly feeling like if we don't keep up, we're going to fall down. We don't feel like we're safe. We don't feel like people trust us. We feel isolated. We feel lonely. You know, and when that happens, a chemical called cortisol enters our body, which is the feeling of stress and anxiety.
Yeah.
That's what cortisol does. It's designed to keep us alive, right?
Right.
When you come to work, and it's not about stress from work. It's when you fear your own colleagues, when you fear that when something went wrong, someone's going to throw you under the bus. If you have to send a CYA email in your company, it's a good sign that you have to spend time and energy to protect yourself from each other. Mm-hmm. You know, if you keep a folder of all the great things you've done just in case you need it, you know, it's a sign that you're taking time and energy away from advancing the organization and you're doing things to protect yourselves from your own leadership, right?
Right.
Anybody who fears that if they follow the rules to the letter that they will get in trouble or lose their job has fear from leadership. In other words, they don't feel like they can take risks, which is a terrible way to live.
We're not working at our best. We don't care for the things we're doing. We're not helping each other is the most important part. And the residual impact is that we are unfulfilled by the work that we do. And when we're unfulfilled by the work that we do, we focus on the details. And when we focus on the details, we retract from each other. When we retract from each other, we feel lonely.
And the more cortisol we have in our bodies, the more stress we feel. But cortisol screws with our immune systems. It completely screws with our immune systems. So in an unbalanced, unhealthy, poorly led organization, yes, our lives are actually cut short. Cancer is higher in those kinds of organizations. You know, diabetes is up, you know, with people who have too much cortisol in their bodies. Heart disease, you know, happy people live longer. When you have more oxytocin and less cortisol, you're a healthier person. So it's a biologically true statement. In an unhealthy, unbalanced, poorly led organization, those leaders are literally killing the people who work for them. They're literally cutting their lives short. That is a true biological statement.
God, it gives me...
This is the power of community. Remember, we're social animals, and social animals need people. We need to feel like we're valued and valuable and feel like we're members of community.
God, it gives me chills. It's scary to think about this because I feel like it's almost thought of as like the norm. Like, yeah, of course, like you're kind of fighting your way to like win out like with your colleagues to like get the, you know, leading sales position or whatever. People say, well, okay, like there's too much risk. Like, yeah, I don't like my job, but like I have a family to support, all this stuff. Like I can't really afford to change. I know you cover this in the book with some pretty deep detail and some statistics. I'd love to just cover that a little bit because I know a lot of people are thinking that as they watch this.
Sure. You know, there's two parts of it.
Yeah.
You don't have to quit. Absolutely not. You don't have to quit. But let's talk about that for 1 second.
Okay.
Right? So the choice to work in a toxic environment because I need the money, right? Though true, and the pressures are real. First of all, that environment shortens your own lifespan and makes you more susceptible to illness. That's number one. Number two, you're justifying staying in the job for the kids, quote unquote, right? Mm-hmm. I got bills to pay, mouths to feed, right? But there's good data on the fact on raising children that working late or business trips and things like that actually have minimal to no effect on the raising of your children, though you may feel guilty. Mm-hmm. What has a greater impact on the raising of your children is if you love your job or not. Wow. Because people who love their jobs come home happy and they have more patience and they have more time and they have more energy to play and raise their kids. People who don't love their jobs, they come home stressed, they come home anxious, they don't have time or patience or energy to be with their kids, and it actually hurts the raising of the children. What's more, there's something called mirror neurons, which is our children learn from us. And so what happens is when our kids see us come home every single day tired and exhausted, they think work is something that makes you tired and exhausted. Yeah. And so if they get a job that makes them tired and exhausted and short-tempered, that's normal. That should never be considered normal.
Right.
So the negative impact we're having on our children by staying in the job can be really, really bad.
Parents who come home from jobs they hate or don't love, their kids are more likely to be bullies at school. And now you think about the bullying epidemic we have in America, right? Where there's this disturbing number of young children who are killing themselves, suicides, because of bullies. The problem is not the schools, and the problem isn't even the parenting. The problem is the jobs the parents have. This is the importance and this is the power of the work that we do and the places we go to work, right? Most of us, I mean, like when you listen to the unemployment statistics, they say, you know, we're all-time high, record high, 9 to 10% unemployment, right? And people go, oh my God, that's terrible. And I hear that number and I go, well, that means 91% still have a job, right? Now, granted, we want to get that employment number up, but that means 91% are still going to work. The question is how many of them are coming home fulfilled by the work that they do and how many of them are waking up inspired to go back to work the next day. If we don't love our works, we don't look out for each other. And if we don't look out for each other, we feel lonely. If we don't feel lonely, all these negative things happen.
And by the way, nobody's recommending just blindly quitting.
Definitely not.
You know, you usually find another job first before you quit.
Right.
I mean, there's jumping out of a plane and there's jumping out of a plane with a parachute. You know?
Right. And we cover that a lot at Liberty Legend. People, I think, on the internet, they kind of like rah, 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 quit your job. It's like, if you quit your job and don't know what you're doing next, you'll panic and grab the wrong job next. It's just a mess.
Although and here's how bad it is, at least in corporate America. Here's how bad it is. There's some good statistics on this, and some good data on this as well, which is people without a job have the same stress or lower stress than people who are in a job they hate.
Wow.
The same or low.
You know, this began a bunch of years ago when I wrote Start With Why, and I gave this TED Talk about the same concept. And the origin of it came from my own pain. I had a job, I had a small business, I had a small marketing consultancy, and everything superficially was good. We had amazing clients, I had my own little office, I had a couple of employees, I made a decent living, wasn't getting rich, but I made a decent living, and superficially everything was great, I was living the American dream. But it got to the point after a few years of doing it that I didn't want to wake up and do it again. I was depressed, I was lonely, I was paranoid, and all of my energy went into pretending that I was happier, more successful, and more in control than I actually felt. Because I was embarrassed to admit that I didn't want to wake up and do it again. Because superficially, my life looked pretty good. So I hid it from the world, lying, hiding, and faking every day. And it wasn't until a very close friend of mine came to me concerned about me, did it give me the courage to admit that I had a problem, and then give me the courage to find the solution. The solution that I found was this thing called the why, grounded in the biology of human decision making. I knew what I did, I knew how I was different from my competition, but I couldn't tell you why I was getting out of bed every morning. And upon finding my why, my passion was restored to levels I'd never experienced before. I had more clarity than I'd ever had. More drive than I'd ever had, more inspired than I ever was. I shared it with my friends. My friends started making crazy life changes. They invited me to share it with their friends. I literally would go and give speeches in people's living rooms in New York City. You know, when you have one of those platters you buy at the supermarket with the celery and the dip in the middle, and like that's what we had. And I gave speeches in people's apartments. And I had helped people find their why for $100 on the side. And then people just kept saying, you need to meet someone. Would you talk about this? And I said, sure. I was so passionate about it. It's all I ever talked about. And people kept inviting me to talk about it. And all of a sudden, I'm doing public speaking. I never imagined I'd do public speaking. Then somebody introduced me to a publisher, Adrian Zackheim. He's here, God of Business Publishing, the original publisher from Good to Great. Anyway, we spent 29 minutes together, and 3 days later, he offered me a book deal. And that's how Start With Why happened.
There's a couple things that can happen if you don't know your why. One is you can suffer malaise at worse or worse depression, and we become very focused on the stuff. So, am I working at a name brand company? Am I making the most money? I met a guy recently. It was the husband of a friend of my sister's who was having a hard time. He'd been laid off, and he was having a hard time, and sort of called in a favor and asked him if I would help him. And I went through my process of asking times where he found joy. And basically what I learned was since he graduated college, every single job he took for the money. Whoever offered him more money was the job he took. And never made a decision based on the people he'd work with, the company he worked for, the culture. Those things never factored. Every job he took was who paid him more money. And now he's in his mid-40s and is literally depressed and lacks focus, and this is what happens. It builds up, which is, yes, he made more money in the short term than all his friends, and now he's jobless. Compared to the people who, as they take jobs, and this is advice that we tell our kids when they graduate school, get a job, but we rarely say get a job you love. And we don't tell them what to look for when they go into a company. Recruiters will always ask, so what are you looking for? And somebody will say, X salary with these kinds of benefits and this kind of vacation. Versus, I'm looking for a mentor. I'm looking for a place that will help me grow. I'm looking to work at a place where I can be myself. These are things to look for. And those are the jobs we should be taking early in our careers. And you absolutely will not make more money than your friends in the short term. You will have more joy on the journey, and you will find yourself in midlife in incredible love with your work and your life. And hard work is not a problem. So I think we confuse stress and passion. Because if you look, when you're passionate for something, well, let's start the other way. If you're stressed about something, if you have a high stress, you work long hours, you miss your family, you toil, you don't know, stress. Well, what's passion? You work long hours, you miss your family, The difference is something I want to be a part of and something I don't want to be a part of. That's the only difference. Stress or passion is simply the result of whether this fits into something greater in my life. But if you don't know why you showed up in the first place, you're only going to have stress. You can work doubly as hard and have passion. You can be traveling all around the world, you can still miss your family, you can still hate that side of it, but you will love what you're doing.
The time to find your why is when you want to find it. I never believe that somebody should be forced to find it. I would never tell somebody you have to find it. When you're ready to find it, then find it. If it's when you're 18, do it when you're 18. If it's when you're 24, do it when you're 24. If it's when you're 50, do it when you're 50. But when you are ready, like my rule for me is I won't help anybody find their why unless they ask me. Because you have to want it. You have to want it.